Hi, my name is Isaac Ho. I'm an author. I wrote The Repatriation of Henry Chin and Death in Chinatown and Hell is Full of Strippers. Screenwriter also, and I wrote the screenplay for 1001 Ways to Enjoy the Missionary Position. I graduated from the MFA screenwriting program at UCLA, and I've probably written about a dozen scripts in the interim. But the bottom line is that in 2012, 128 studio pictures were made. 36 of them were 3D pictures, and a guy breaking in is not going to write any of those pictures. That leaves 82 films. 82 films that are produced by the studios, and those are the jobs we're competing for. Last year, the Nichols screenwriting contest had over 7,000 spec screenplays submitted. So that's your competition, 7,000 screenplays, plus the 12,000 members of the Writers Guild that are also looking for those jobs. You got 19,000 writers competing for 82 studio jobs last year. You have a 1 in 250 chance of landing one of those jobs. And for me, those odds just are really, really terrible. As a screenwriter, having written 12 screenplays, if I don't sell them or if they don't get turned to movies to all my friends, it looks like I'm standing still. And I just wanted, as a writer, I do have something to say. That's why we become writers. And so it just seemed it was a better deal for me to switch gears and to get something of mine out there. And that's why I started writing novels. The barrier to entry for novels has never been lower. You don't need to land a contract with one of the big 6 publishing companies. You can actually, if you have something written, you can get it out on the internet and start selling it tomorrow. And that was one of the great things that attracted me to writing. One of my grad school buddies called me up one day and said, "Hey Isaac, I'm putting together a digital platform for publishing. Do you have any novels you've always wanted published?" And I said, "Give me a couple weeks." 3 months later, I'd written my first novel. What's different today is that with digital film, digital media, digital publishing, we can get our stories out there without having to go through, a mainstream gatekeeper like a studio or like a publisher, and getting things out on YouTube. But for me, what I'm seeing is a shift in intent in what we're trying to do. No longer are we trying to create a fantastic YouTube video so that we can get a job at the studio. What we're trying to do now is create a fantastic YouTube video or create a fantastic ebook so that we can make our own monies and that we can control our destiny. For the first time, we don't need the publishers. We don't need the studios to get our stories across. And I think that's what's got Hollywood shaking in their boots, because if they don't change, if they don't accommodate that, they're going to lose a generation of really creative people. Let's face it, the stories that they're telling with a white protagonist, a white male protagonist saving the day, we've seen that for the last 100 years. It's gotten stale, and the only thing they can do is make it bigger and noisier, but they can't make it any more heartfelt than they have in the past. And that's where minority voices really are important, because it basically lets us tell you how we see the world, and I guarantee you how we see the world is different. My newest book is the Chinese Delivery Man, which is inspired by what happened in New York City about a decade ago. There was a rash of Chinese delivery men that were getting murdered, and it wasn't the work of a serial killer. It turned out to be random teenagers throughout the city figuring that an easy way to make quick money was to order Chinese food and then rob the Chinese delivery men. And then things got out of hand, and a lot of the Chinese delivery men ended up getting murdered. They figured that, hey, a lot of these guys are probably illegal and they're not going to go to the police. It's just easy money. When I was doing the research for the book, I realized that once the arrests were made, and these criminals, they're dumb. They got caught really quickly. Once the criminals were caught, That was the end of the story. There was no follow-up to see what happened to the family. I mean, someone in their family was murdered. Someone who was integral to the running of their restaurant was dead. What happened to them? And there was virtually no follow-up. There was no, whatever happened to, whatever happened to them. Were they able to survive? Were they able to continue the restaurant? Did they have to, were they, did they have to move away, or did they have to go back to China? There was nothing I could find, and I did the Google search, made some phone calls, and couldn't track down any of these people. And that for me was the story. What happened to them when the tragedy occurs? How do they, how resilient are they? What do they do? And my imagination led me to create the events of the story, The Chinese Delivery Man. What I think makes this interesting is that on TV you have a lot of crime procedurals, ripped from the headline stuff, whodunits, howdunits, and things like that. But if you look at those stories, if you really break it down, it's really the story of the detective. The detective gets to go wherever he wants to go. He gets to talk to whoever he wants to talk to, and the victims are the guest stars. And I wanted to structure the story where the victim of the crime was the protagonist, because for me the procedural is just too easy. It is the story about the white cop going into the neighborhoods and commenting about what he sees. How about flipping that and taking the story from the point of view of the immigrant family, having to deal with an alien justice system that may or may not give them what they want, and commenting about how strange that process is, and then following them, following their story and their journey to resolution. So, in my research, I also found out that Law and Order had done a rip from the headlines episode about this as well. And what struck me was that in the closing arguments, Jack McCoy tries to put a human face on the restaurant owner who was murdered. We've lost, we've lost a father. We've lost a husband. But what was ironic to me is that in the entire episode, you never saw the guy's face. He's dead face down in the teaser. There's no photograph of him. There's nothing to humanize this man. There's nothing for the audience to see that says, oh, this guy was a father. We just have McCoy's words. We just have his point of view. And that's something that I was very consciously aware of when I was writing the novel, because I don't want this from a cop's point of view. I don't want this from a DA's point of view. I want this from the family's point of view.